Let's start talking about wind then.
We was like, has he been watching us? Did he see us last night? And that's why he's decided to.
Oh, it was bad, you know. I mean, it was great. And it was such a great surf, wasn't it? It was fab. But it was just every time you'd like get off the board again after the wave, like you'd have to be so careful because mine literally
they were just flying up.
It was horrible. Yeah. But it got much nicer.
Yeah, it did settle down, didn't it?
Yeah.
That is an offshore wind. That it does. But yeah.
Offshore wind. Yeah, it then turned to a crosswind. I don't know. What do you call it when it goes across?
Yeah, cross shore.
Or
usually in surfing terms, you talk about the wind in relation to what it's doing to the land, basically. So if it's offshore, it's blowing off from the shore out to sea. If it's onshore, the wind is blowing from the sea onto the shore. If it's blowing if you're still on the shore, it's blowing acrossways. So the terminology behind it is pretty sort of self-explanatory on it. But yeah, cross-shore wind. But then you'll hear people going, oh, it's cross off or cross onshore, where it's like a little bit offshore, but still a bit from the side. Loads of different variations.
Cool.
Did you guys manage to catch a few waves last night then?
Yeah. I was trying to practice my pop-up because from not surfing those like 5 weeks or so, I feel like I've just lost it all.
Yeah, it's probably all gone. You'll never get it back.
No. So Adeline was helping me a bit. We did a bit of practice on the beach, didn't we?
No. But the conditions, like I know the wind's pretty strong at the moment, but it's supposed to sort of gradually drop off over the weekend. By Sunday, especially, the wave size picks up a little bit. So you should notice that it's still keeping this nice weather, and you'll be able to get a few more waves, a bit more practice.
Yeah,
that's good.
Definitely need the practice.
Yeah, but it was.
Yeah, it was
fun. Any questions on wind? Like, I didn't really know what to say with it because the topic. I think it was Sophie that suggested the topic of onshore and offshore wind. But onshore is when it's blowing from the sea to the land, and offshore is when it's blowing from land to the sea. So, what sort of questions do you guys have about it? What do you want to know about surfing wind?
I haven't got this far. 1 second. Let me just brainstorm.
I was thinking maybe like how strong, like what's the strength limit of the wind to have an impact and make it harder for us to paddle into waves and stuff.
So, talking about offshore winds, the strength of offshore wind that would negatively affect a wave totally depends on the size.
Right.
Going back to like a few weeks ago, we were talking about how waves have power, and then as they come into shallow water, they get steeper and break, and about the different shapes of waves that you can have. What an offshore wind will do is basically hold a wave up. So if the wind's blowing this way, the wave's coming in, and it can just hold that wave up. So it will stay steeper and steeper and steeper for longer, builds up a lot of momentum behind it. So you'll find like an offshore wind generally, that's when you're going to see the barreling waves because it holds up that wave. Even on, we were talking about how on flat beaches, barreling waves don't happen so often. On beaches like Polzeath, everything like that, like those sort of really long flat beaches. But if there's an offshore wind, it can hold that wave up to the point where it builds up enough potential energy and power behind that then it does barrel. So there's no sort of hard and fast rule of how strong a wind is strong, because if you've got a really big wave, then, or let's say you've got a wave that's say double overhead, something like that, that can handle a much stronger offshore wind than the waves that we've got at the moment. I mean, down there at Crantock at the moment, Ellie, you just got out, it's about knee high, but the wind is probably too strong for it at the moment. It was pretty hard to actually catch the waves, wasn't it? So by having that, the strength of the wind really varies on the height of the waves. In all honesty, once the strength of the offshore gets to, I don't know, like say 20, 25 mile an hour offshore upwards, it's going to have to be a really solid swell in order to break well. When it starts getting that, the other big thing with the wind is whether it's a sort of sustained wind or it's the gusts that are going to speed. Sustained wind speed is basically the wind that is constant. So as the name suggests, sustained means it's just the strength of the wind that's constantly blowing. But depending on the storm system that's come past or what it is that's made the wind, you can find that whilst the sustained wind speed might be 15 mile an hour, something like that, and you've got a kind of fairly stiff breeze, but it's kind of all right. Every now and then you get a gust come through that can be almost double that. That can, if you're trying to catch a wave just as a gust's coming, you'll find it really hard. So to put any kind of definite figure on it is really hard to do. You've just got to judge it day by day, and how it all comes back to kind of what we were talking about last week in the safety, about looking at it. Have a look at the waves beforehand, watch what other people are doing. A good indicator on the waves. Have you guys all seen the ocean today at some point?
Yeah.
Today there were, if you looked like on the beach, there were waves breaking. There was a bit of spray coming off the back of them. But as you looked further out to sea, you could see there were like little white horses, like little waves capping and getting more and more foamy. Once you start to see those, that's an indication that you've got a pretty sort of considerable wind going. Similarly, when it's onshore wind, if it's onshore, it means that as a wave comes up to this shape, the wind blowing behind it is going to force it to break a little bit before it should. So even on beaches that are maybe really prone to having really steep barreling waves, if the wave's onshore, you might get a bit of a roll in on those days where you're able to catch the wave before you would normally and get into the wave before it gets too steep. So it can have, as much as normally in surfing, you're looking for offshore winds to get that nice green pulling condition. If you've got an onshore wind, it can be a little bit user-friendly sometimes, especially on those sort of low tide at Crantock or something. If it's onshore, you get into the waves a little bit easier. You're not just sort of taking off as we're about to break onto the sand. But once you start to see those sort of, we call them white horses out to sea, those sort of waves out to sea, that's a sign that whatever wind you've got going on that day is pretty considerable and is going to be something that is going to affect your surf in some way, shape or form.
Cool.
So is a bit of wind good, but you don't want too much?
Yeah, I mean the optimum conditions generally, these are very, very broad brushstroke, is that if you've anywhere you are in the world, if you're surfing, if you've got light offshore winds, that's generally what we're looking for.
Right.
I don't know how many of you guys were there on the week we were talking about how waves are created and formed, but going back to that sort of very start of how a wave comes to be, is wind blows over the surface of the ocean. So wind blows over the surface of the ocean. The longer it blows for, the harder it blows, the more distance it blows for, the bigger the waves get. So if you've got, say, onshore winds, yes, you're going to have exactly the same waves as you would have on an offshore condition. You've got the waves that you want to ride, but in between them, you've got all those little choppy waves as well that are have been traveling for miles with those bigger swells that you want to ride. It can just get a little bit messy and a bit hard to predict. Whereas on the offshore days, so you've got the waves that are coming from out to sea coming this direction, you've got the wind coming this way. So at the point where you're surfing the wave here in the middle, you've got the wave that has been traveling for hundreds of miles, and you've got the wind that might only have been blowing on that stretch of water for 2-3 meters. So the wind has had almost no effect on the water surface. There's no choppiness, there's no little rips and wobbles and everything like that. You're just dealing with the wave that's traveled miles to come and break on the shore. So a light offshore wind is generally what we're looking for, in that you're not going to have that messiness and choppiness in between. You're going to have the chance to read the waves a lot easier because you haven't got all the other interference in between. The waves will be in those days where you get the nice clean of waves. So a light offshore day is really good, but at the same time, if you've got a day where, like I've had some brilliant surfs where the wind is onshore, and you go out there and it's absolutely brilliant. You're getting some really nice rides, and because it doesn't look perfect, you've got a lot less crowds in the water as well. You've got a lot less people in. Also, the benefit of being in Cornwall, we've got a lot of really, really high cliffs. So a lot of beaches are in coves or sheltered by cliffs. So you could have a wind which on paper should be really, really messing those waves up. Let's say, for example, okay, let's stick with Crantock. So you got Crantock. Crantock faces out pretty much west, ever so slightly to the south there, but heading out to the west. So you've got a wind that's coming from, is forecast to come from sort of west northwest sort of direction. So on it would be really, really crap and really choppy and wild and nasty. But as the wind arrives, it turns out that it's got a lot that's coming from a much more northerly direction than it was forecast to. And because of that, you've got the whole of Pentire Headland blocking that wind. So you can go down there on a day where everyone thought it was going to be really nasty and horrible and on shore, but you've gone down, and actually, because you're surfing up that end, it's sheltered. You've got almost no wind on the waves at all. You've got no people in because everyone thought it was going to be rubbish, and you've done all right. So I'm always wary to, and you can always look at the wind and go, oh, this is going to be perfect for this spot. But it's one of those things that comes from trial and error. There are some spots that handle an onshore wind much better. There are other spots where if you get a sort of moderate offshore breeze, a little bit lighter than what we've got today, a wave like over at Towan, for example. Towan is really nice, quite nice and lined up, but it has got a really natural habit of closing out pretty much 90% of the time. The waves come in, uniform beach. The waves can come in and they all break once. You haven't got any unbroken face to really work with. You're up 2 seconds, the wave breaks. If the wind's offshore, that can actually make that quite often worse there, because the whole wave is getting held up. So then even on a normal day, say it will break here and then you've got a couple of seconds, then it will break here. On an offshore day, the whole thing gets held up, so it all breaks at the same time. So on that beach, an offshore wind might not be an advantage. Whereas on an onshore day, it makes that difference a little bit more. This bit here starts crumbling. You get a nice little bit of a wave to come along on here, and you get a much longer ride. So as much as the shape of the wave might not be as steep, it might not be as critical, by having an onshore wind, it might actually mean that you get an easier takeoff and you get a longer ride. So it's all to do with what you're looking for. I mean, on the other end of the scale as well, guys who are, if you look at the sort of pros who are going for working on their aerial maneuvers and stuff like that on surfing, they like an onshore wind. Onshore wind, if you're looking to do sort of the bulk maneuvers, doing aerials and stuff, it means that it holds, like Bex, you know, it kind of, going up, it holds the board.
You flying boards, that's what we do. You know, when you say light winds,
yeah,
what kind of miles per hour would you say is light?
So light wind would generally be anything 10 mile an hour or less, really.
Right.
Like, anything 5 mile an hour or less, you're really not going to feel. 10 mile an hour less light wind, sort of 10 to probably 10 to 15, maybe up to like the high teens would be a moderate wind. Once you get over 20 mile an hour, the wind's there.
Right.
You know, I haven't looked at the wind charts today. I don't know what the readings are for today's wind, but I would say today would be around the sort of 20 mile an hour mark. And you can feel that it's not impossible to surf, but you definitely know that there's some wind there.
And if there's like no wind at all, does that mean you're not really going to have any waves?
No, going back to that first week, waves are. But no, waves are made by wind miles out to sea. They're made by storm systems miles out to sea. The local winds can affect the shape of the wave, how much choppiness there is. They have a massive impact on the size of it. To an extent, they don't affect the size. If you imagine a wave's coming in like this, if it's an onshore wind and it starts breaking like that, the actual vertical height is going to be slightly less than if it was an offshore wind blowing this way and it holds the wave up until it gets super steep. But that difference is going to be pretty negative, really. The thing that makes waves bigger or smaller is what's going on out to sea, how long those sort of sustained winds. So your local winds have much more of an impact on the shape of the waves and the cleanliness of the waves, how lined up and everything they are. So yeah, having no wind is I love no wind days.
Right. Okay.
They're really nice. Sometimes you can be in the surf, but it's it's more being picky than anything. There are some breaks and some waves where the waves that they're best when there is a little bit of light offshore, because otherwise the waves just they can sort of crumble a little bit in places. They can be little bit harder to predict. So light offshore, as I said, is usually the one that has the optimum conditions. But it's not to say that you can't have a good surf in any other sort of kind of wind as well.
Yeah.
I don't have any more questions.
Oh, sorry. You know, say like last night where boards were doing that flying thing.
Yeah.
Is it like safe to be in the water when it's doing that, or is there anything we should be doing to, like, I don't know?
So if it's a strong offshore wind and your board's getting blown around, that's like we're going back to last week. We were talking about ocean safety, and when we talk about ocean safety, the common things that everyone worries about is rip currents or rocks or the biggest cause of injuries in surfing is your own surfboard.
Yeah, because we saw a guy, didn't we, yesterday morning, and he came out the water.
Face.
Yeah, he said, that
he had like
was
blood, like probably streaming down his face. Very dramatic.
It's like I'm just wrinkly, but do you see how, like, in the middle of my eyes there, one side is slightly deeper than the other?
Yeah.
Right in there.
Yeah.
A longboard fin hit me in the head years ago.
Oh gosh, that was close to the eye.
Yeah.
And was that from wind?
Yeah, just like what you should, anytime you're surfing, exactly what everyone's doing there. Cover your head. You know, if you don't know where your board is, cover your head. Whether you're underwater, whether you're above water, cover your head. There's times when you forget that, and this was one of those times. And whenever the elements are making things more dangerous, so like if you've got an offshore wind and you know your board's going to be blown around, it's even more important to remember to cover that head up when you're doing it. Ideally, when you're at the end of the ride, don't just sort of kick your board away off. Try and ride along, bend your knees down, grab hold of your board, slide off the side of your board, and so yes, that is definitely a safety concern. When the wind gets strong enough to be sort of lifting boards up and flying them around, that becomes a big safety concern. And it's when we're running lessons, for example, in the surf school, anytime it's offshore, we'll spend so much more time with the students, just teaching them how to, like, just hold onto your board. With the wind, you got to think that your board is naturally quite a streamlined object. So use that to your advantage. Don't be walking out there trying to have your board sideways on and getting blown around like this, trying to fight it. Keep it flat on the water. Keep a couple of hands flat on the water. Keep the board nice and flat so the wind can't get underneath it.
Yeah.
But when you go out, when you fall off, you just have to be super aware that is a very likely possibility that the wind is going to get under your board, flip the board up, and slam it back down. And you definitely want your head to be under that point where the board hits down.
Oh, no.
What sort of tips could you give us about when we're paddling for a wave and it's really strong offshore wind? What can we do to...
Waves when the wind's blowing offshore is definitely harder because you're trying to move in one direction with the wave and the wind's blowing you the other way. So times like that's why, you know how when we're out surfing, me and Ross are quite often telling you guys, move further forward on the board. Or like making sure that board's like completely flat. When it's offshore, that stuff becomes even more important. So the flatter you can keep your board to that surface of the water stops the wind being able to get under it. Your board's got a bit of rocker always at the front there. So if you see like that very slight curve, that's fine. Too far back on your board and the board's tipping up like that, the wind.
I noticed that last night. Yeah, I noticed I had to get a bit more.
Yeah, there is good. Also, while you're paddling, rather than sort of really arching your back up, that's giving the wind the opportunity to blow against you here. So maybe you might sort of duck your head down a little bit more as well, more streamlined. You'll also find that you might have got into a bit of a habit of paddling in and you feel the waves start to pick you up and you know, okay, 1, 2, 3, up to my feet. When it's offshore, you might need more than 3 paddles. You might need 4, 5, 6 paddles. You're really going to need to wait to get your board into that wave. Wait till you're dropping down the face of the wave before you stand up. once you're up on your feet as well, once you've caught it, one thing we see a lot is that people catch the wave fine and then they stand up and kind of go like this really tall, and you're basically making yourself into a sail. So as soon as you
sail away, sail away.
I reckon that happened a little bit, did it?
Oh, yeah.
So when you're standing up, use that as an opportunity that you're getting up, you're trying to keep yourself nice and streamlined, keep your knees bent, stay low, basically present less of a surface there for the wind to blow against and go back. When you're getting up, maybe at that point of getting up, your feet land on the board and just kind of assume that the wind will have blown you back a bit. So you want to push ever so slightly harder on the front foot as you're getting up, just to keep that nose down and regain your speed. So that kind of element of the wind, you do adapt what you're doing. On an onshore day, it's not so much of an issue because the wind's going in the same direction, but there's going to be a lot more choppiness and a little bit harder to predict the waves.
Yeah.
Yeah, yesterday it was a bit scary because at one point I think I was going like trying to go along the wave, and I like kind of stood up. I was crouching down, but then it kept like it was so strong that it was like pushing up the side of my board.
Yeah. So on those sort of when if you've caught the wave and you're managing to ride along it more, we always, I think we've spoken to you about it actually, about how when you're starting to ride an unbroken wave, you almost want to divide the face of it into 3 parts, like top, middle, and bottom. So normally we would say to start with, you want to be trying to ride in that middle third of the wave where there's a good bit of speed and power. You're not too close to the top so that you fall off the back. You're not going to get stuck down at the bottom. When we're talking about a strong offshore wind, you still kind of want to be in that middle third, but definitely towards the bottom end of that middle third. Because you are going to get gusts that come and your board sort of starts getting blown up the face. So then you might have to turn back towards the beach, bring yourself back down the face again. So all those little adjustments, they're things that's all sort of part of surfing, adapting to those conditions and reacting to what the wind's throwing at you, what the waves are throwing at you, everything like that, to try and adjust your technique to make sure that you're still getting nice rides and enjoying yourself. Cool. Yeah, it can be frustrating when the other thing you'll find if you watch on offshore days is that anytime you see someone doing a turn at the top of the wave, it looks a lot more critical because as you turn, there's so much wind blowing up that it looks like you're kicking out tons of spray at the back. But you'll see loads of people going up, doing a turn, and then that's it. They get stuck. They can't get back down the wave. So you'll find that on offshore days, you'll see like good surfers doing their turns, their top turns there, or the wave face. They're not going to go all the way up here, right up to the top and blow the fins out, because if they do that, they're just going to fall off the back of the wave. So they might do like more of a mid-face turn. And as much as you guys aren't looking to sort of go and blow the fins out on waves, you're still doing turns along the face of it, but maybe just think about bringing those a little bit lower down the wave face so that you're going to stay there. You guys look very, very like untrusting of what
No, I'm just thinking.
No, I can't relate to that yesterday.
I'm not there. I'm not there yet.
I need to work on pop-ups, I think.
Yeah.
And not being a sail.
But you were at the back yesterday though, because it was quite
only at the end.
Not very deep, and then the wave were breaking closer to the beach, so then that was great.
No,
doesn't need to be big.
Out of interest, when you so you guys were all surfing yesterday. When you guys go surfing, the stuff that we've talked about in the theory sessions, are you guys finding it useful and being able to like relate it to?
Oh yes, definitely.
We're always thinking about the rips are and things, aren't we?
And if you sort of started to pick out some of the patterns and you can sort of see where rips are and where to avoid, where's a better area.
And what to do as well, definitely. Yeah.
I definitely think it's work in progress though, because I still I think unless I'm with you guys, I find it really scary still to even go out back, unless it's really shallow. Like Adeline yesterday, you were just out there the whole time, and at one point I just sat out because I was like, I can't get there. It just panics me so much. But I think that's a case of just keeping going at it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Getting used to that thing. Surfing is always a learning curve. I've been surfing almost 20 years and it's still a learning curve. There's people who've been surfing 40, 50 years, and every time you go in the ocean, you're going to learn. You're always going to have something that you're like, I didn't do that quite right. I need to do better at that. And that is surfing. And that's why I think that's a big reason why it's always so much fun. because you've always got that next challenge, that next thing you're working on. There's anyone who tells you they've mastered surfing and they're like, yeah, done that, I've got that, tick that box, they're lying to you. There's no such thing. Even the very best surfers in the world have still got new things to learn. They've got new things they want to improve. They've got conditions they're not quite as comfortable in as other conditions. So yeah, get used to that feeling of not really knowing what you're doing, because that is surfing.
Oh, well, I'm nailing it there. That. If it's a windy day, a bad wind, is there not some places local that are better than others? Like Towern's quite sheltered, isn't it?
Well, it all depends on the direction of the wind. So
Okay.
I think we mentioned, it was one of the chats we were talking about, like why some surf spots are, oh sorry, that was my computer. I've got a text, sorry, that was really loud. But there are some surf spots around where we were talking about why one spot is better than another on a different day. And that
I think I asked this question.
I think you did.
it's totally valid. Like in Cornwall, we're super lucky that there are beaches facing in literally every single compass direction. Like every single angle, there is a beach facing in that direction. So which means it's always offshore somewhere and it's always sheltered from the wind somewhere. One is the place where it's sheltered from the wind and offshore, the waves might not be able to get into. So that's why it's such a sort of balancing act between, okay, you can always find somewhere where there's no wind. That's not a problem. We've got such a jagged, extreme coastline that that's never a problem. But what you have to do is it's a sort of balancing act between, okay, we've got super strong wind and a really big swell, no problem at all. Super light wind, super small swell, no problem at all. When we've got a strong wind and a strong wind and small swell like we have at the moment, that really gets more difficult to find a good surf, because in order to capture all of the power of that swell, you need a beach that's quite exposed. But if you go to a beach that's quite exposed, it's likely to be exposed to the wind as well. So yes, different beaches definitely have their own sort of set of wind that they're going to be better on or worse on, or more favourable, less favourable, whatever. So for example, offshore winds on this north coast here, when we're talking like easterlies, southeasterlies, if you go down to Watergate and walk down the slipway and turn to the right, look how big the cliffs are there. If you go along there, that can block a massive amount of the wind, especially if you're surfing around mid or high tide. If you're talking about a northerly wind, Crantock can be quite good. Well, I'm getting really persistent texts coming through. On a northerly wind, Crantock can be good because you've got the whole entire headland there blocking it. On a southerly wind, South Fistral can be quite good because the same headland that helps Crantock in the northerlies helps South Fistral in the southerlies. Town Beach, again, southerlies, even southwesterlies, you've got the whole of Newquay Town blocking it there. If you've got a wind coming in from some sort of northwesterly direction, almost all the beaches on the north coast can be really pretty exposed. There are a select few that can be a bit better, but then you go down to the south coast on a northwesterly wind, somewhere like Prague can be sort of cross offshore. So there's a load of different beaches that will work well. But it's, like I said, it's about striking that balance between, okay, how much swell is there out there and how much wind is there out there? They're going to be your real two key factors towards deciding where's going to be the best surf for you on that day, really.
Okay.
Well, all of that comes, like I've mentioned a few like well-known beaches, but part of the fun of surfing is those wild goose chases and looking at a map and going, that's going to be a brilliant spot. That's where we're going. And you get there and it's completely flat and you eat a pasta and go have a beer and you're like, I'm up on surfing for today. And everyone had those sessions. I remember when I was first starting out, we used to go on these, we'd be looking at the map and go, yeah, here's going to be brilliant, and go off on this wild stormy day. And 90% of the time you end up back at Towan surfing like waist high waves with everyone else. And you just go have a beer somewhere and go home. And you might have driven 300 miles that day around all these little nooks and crannies of Cornwall, sure that you're going to find this like perfect break. But for me, that's one of my favorite parts of surfing is the search, like going out and trying to read the conditions, find out, like, right, what wind's happening today, what swell's out there, look at the map and kind of your own knowledge and your memories of where's good. It's awesome.
We should do that.
All part of a fun surf trip. It's one thing I was going to say suggest to the ladies club actually is in the past we've done quite a few. We call them our Cornish safaris, and it's basically.
Adeline's down with that.
I would definitely be down for that.
We load up the van with a load of boards and wetsuits and kit, like you guys have got your own kit, and we get in the van, and on any given day we basically set off with no real agenda, no mileage limit, and we just try to find the best waves in Cornwall on any given day.
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
love that. Yeah.
It's a good fun one, and like we've done quite a few of them through the years, but I'll sit down with Ross, but at the moment we can't do them because it involves lots of people being
yeah, of course.
But yeah, it's definitely something we'll bring back, and those of you that sort of, basically as soon as you're able to catch waves and stand up on your own, you're kind of understanding a bit of safety and stuff, we can always find you some good waves. Very, very rare where there's a day where you can't find it, and if you can't find good waves, you go in where there's not so good waves, you have a fun surf, and then you go to the pub, and that's still a really fun day.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I really want to explore more of Cornwall as well.
Yeah.
Because I don't know like anything. I don't know. Like we went today more towards like Cadreevy.
Portreath area, didn't we?
Yeah, and we were gonna stop in Portreath, and then there were so many people, we just kept going.
Yeah.
And
we
hadn't
found this amazing little cove, didn't we?
So good.
It was
I think it was a nudist beach, but it was amazing. It was so good. I don't know if you had to go down this tiny little random path down the cliff face, and it was lush.
You have to hold on to these ropes as you go down. It's that steep. And we got half down. I was like, oh, I think it's a nudist beach. It was so nice, wasn't it? It was perfect for a swim and a little snorkel. It was like such a good find.
Nice.
But I would love to go surf down the end of Cornwall at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some good spots. They're just fun days out, and you get to see a few new spots. Like we'll never sort of part of surf. As you kind of surf more and more, you'll learn that there are certain secret spots that you kind of have to
find yourself
by yourself. But we won't be doing anything like that. But there's plenty of well-known spots that anyone could find and drive to, and have got a car park that just by knowing the conditions, we'll go and have a little adventure.
Yeah. That'll be good. That'll be a good adventure.
Yeah,
because I'm always
good celebration once lockdown restrictions are over.
Yeah, definitely. Because I always find it hard to go to a spot I've never been to before, because I never really know. Oh my gosh, is it actually going to be any waves, or is it going to be too big for me or too small? I don't know. So.
Well, that was kind of why we started doing these safaris, was not so much to sort of, partly obviously to show people new spots and take them to places they hadn't been before, but also to take away that, or to certainly limit that risk factor of, if you go to a new spot and you're not as experienced, it can be quite hard to go, oh, should I be surfing here? Is this right for me? Is there something I don't know? Especially if there aren't any lifeguards on the beach, or there's, let's say a rock formation there that you're not sure on. Does that extend underwater? And just by us, I've surfed around Cornwall for a long time, and just by having that knowledge, we can sort of go, yeah, this beach looks really good, but actually, I'm telling you this because the waves look good, but we're not going to surf here because it's super dangerous. But this one, watch out for this, surf there, you'll be fine. And it's more of a sort of guiding thing, just taking you guys out, show you some new spots, make sure everyone makes it back alive.
It's always a victory, that one.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's a good thing with summer in Cornwall. If we lose someone, you can always pick someone else up en route. So.
This reminds me, in the future, once this has all eased a little bit, could we possibly at some point have a learn to longboard sesh?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
We're considering getting a longboard.
Wow. Once I save up some money.
100%, definitely. Longboarding's really fun, and definitely trying to think I think actually Ellie, your start, seeing you on waves, I think you're going to be a longboarder. I don't think you're the way you move your board, it seems like you've kind of got to the hang of that green board of when you want to turn it sharper, just stepping back and pushing through your back foot a bit more to spin it round. And the way you're surfing it, I reckon, we'll get some longboarding sessions going for sure.
Let's do it. That'd be really fun. That would be cool.
Yeah.
This was good. Thank you for the wind talk.
Yeah.
I hope it was useful, and thank you all for coming along. Next week we're going to chat about, I think it raced up the rankings, about surf etiquette, which I think is a really good one for everyone, given that all of you now are starting to either surf unbroken waves or at least starting to think about it and working towards it. It's going to be a really good one to go through. So hopefully you guys and anyone else who's watching this at a later date is able to join us next week for the chat on surf etiquette, and we do it at 7 o'clock on Friday again.
Awesome. Yeah. Brilliant.
See you guys. Enjoy
cool. Thank you.
See
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.